Hi, my name is Greg Canty, and I'd like to welcome you to the Win Happy podcast. I love chatting to people from all walks of life about their lives and their careers, about the choices they make along the way to pursue their happiness, and what winning actually means to them. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I do. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I had a very fascinating chat with Fiona Finn, CEO of the Sexual Health Centre in Cork. Like so many people, Fiona was forced to leave a very repressed Ireland for London in search of work and adventure. Working for a local authority, she discovered a passion for making a difference when she was helping immigrants as part of her role. Following this passion, she returned to Ireland, and as a mature student, she completed a law degree with a focus on human rights. She took a role with the Migrants and Refugee Rights Centre in NASC and became their CEO. She joined the One Foundation and then the Sexual Health Centre in Cork, where she has been since 2024. The work here is very diverse, covering everything from reproductive health, chem sex, transgender support to understanding the rising hatred against the LGBTQ+ community in Ireland. Everywhere Fiona goes, she's determined to make a difference. Let's hear from Fiona. Fiona Finn, a huge welcome to the Win Happy podcast. How are you doing?
Thanks, Greg. Well, yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you. Lovely to be here.
And a beautiful, beautiful summer's morning.
Yet again, I know, we're absolutely blessed. Like, I'm getting too used to this now. I'm just kind of thinking, this is it. This is normal. Like, it has never rained in Ireland before. And I always do when the sun shines. I forget how terrible the weather can be and kind of think, okay, this is it now. This is great. It's going to be like this for months. But yeah, it's beautiful.
It's the perfect place, isn't it, when the sun shines?
You see, I always say that, but I'm sure most Cork people say that as well. We do, like, you know, you wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It's the best place in the world. It is, though. It's beautiful.
And while we've had a fair bit of duration in terms of the sunny spell, and it kind of broke a tiny bit yesterday. You could feel it getting cooler. I was driving back from West Cork and the skies were grey, and I did decide to myself, I don't like grey. I really don't.
Yeah. I know. And yeah, you can see that sometimes. It does look very oppressive, doesn't it? When you look up and there's just grey everywhere. Like, yeah.
Yeah, we had loads of that this year. So you're the CEO of the Sexual Health Centre in Cork. And a lot of people probably know very little about who you are and what you do, so we might illuminate them. But more than that, I'd like them to get to know you.
Okay.
And how we sort of connected was I noticed there was a write-up in one of the newspapers about a survey you're doing called Crossroads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that was exploring the whole idea of rising hate and
hostility
against the LGBT+ communities in Ireland.
Yeah.
And there's rising hate and hostility in loads of little pockets, and it's popping up everywhere. So I'd love to get into that in more detail. But before we do all of that, I'd like to find out about you.
Okay. I'm not very good at talking about myself now, but go on.
So far.
Okay, yeah, so far.
So who the hell are you and where did you come from?
So I'm Fiona Finn. I originally came from Cork. I grew up in Albert Road, or Jewtown as it's known in Cork City. I lived in Cork, went to school, college, and then like a lot of people in the 1980s emigrated to the UK and went to London, the first kind of chance we got, because Cork and Ireland as well was a very, very, very bleak place. I came from a very working class family. My father worked in Dunlop's and that closed in, I want to say 84, I think. So obviously that, along with Ford's, the city became quite a depressed place. So it was myself and a group of friends went to London and kind of messed around for a bit. They got jobs, and I stayed there for maybe about 15 years, working various roles, always either, and I used to always think it was by accident, but it always had a certain kind of a social justice kind of bent to it, you know what I mean? Or that was when I got really interested. So I worked for a local authority And initially it was just kind of regular kind of clerical work. And then as I got promoted, I was working with homeless asylum seekers. And I think for me, that was the first time I had encountered refugees and asylum seekers. And I don't know, it was just something just kind of awoken in me, or something clicked in me, you know what I mean? And I had no idea, and I couldn't believe my ignorance at that time. But I always remember meeting, there was an Afghan family came in, and this would have been in the 90s. So it was in whatever, one of the Afghan wars. I think it was just when the Taliban were coming into Afghanistan. They came, they arrived, they were homeless, and they came in front of me, and they had said like that they had sold everything they had to get here. And I had no concept of what that could even be, you know what I mean? And it just kept, it really stuck with me. And then we worked a lot with single homeless people as well. And I remember thinking that I didn't have the tools or the knowledge to do anything else other than what you could do as a local authority. Do you know what I mean? So you could do X, Y, and Z, fulfill the criteria, you receive housing, you don't fulfill the criteria, you don't receive housing. And that was challenging. So we moved back to Ireland in, I think it was about 2002. I took a year off to settle the kids in. Then I went back to college as an adult, and I did law as a mature student. And then I went on and I did a master's, and I focused on human rights. It was very much my focus. And then I got a job, luckily, in NASC, which is the Irish word for link. It's the Migrant and Refugee Rights Centre in Cork. And I started there as legal officer, and then I ended up as CEO, and I was CEO there for about, I think maybe 15, 17 years. You know what I mean? And I loved it. I really did. It was great. Like very, very, very hard work. And then I left there in 2022. And I did a short stint working for a philanthropic organisation, the One Foundation, that were looking at supporting, again, refugees and asylum seekers and people who were experiencing social deprivation. We did a lot of work with the LGBT communities at that time as well. And that foundation closed. So then I was this opportunity came up, and I took it, and I was kind of thinking, well, look, social justice is social justice, human rights is human rights. There were huge transferable skills. So I started in the Sexual Health Centre in November 2024, I think. Yeah. And I have loved it. I really have. It's been amazing. It's been huge. I've always been a very strong ally of the LGBT community anyway, because when I was living in London, living there through the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis, and seeing the impact that had on very close friends and community that we had built there, a community that they had built there, was quite stark. So it's always been something that's been really close to my heart. So I worked here. They're an incredible team, fantastic to work with, and the work is great. It's really, really, really good. It's impactful and it's enjoyable.
I love your optimism around the subject matter, despite it being a challenging place.
It is, but you have to be optimistic. I've always and I think so, working with and for and minority groups, yes, it is challenging. But also, when you get a win or when something positive happens, you have to take that. And you take every single win that you get, and it emboldens you. And that change is slow. It's always slow. But there are little victories that you're going to achieve along the way. And also, obviously, the people that you work with are phenomenally important. They really are.
Okay. So the young girl growing up in Albert Road, the Cork at that time, could you describe it to me? And to the listeners who may not be so tuned into it.
I suppose looking back at it now, as an adult, you would say that Albert Road was a socially deprived area. It didn't feel like that for us. Everybody was in the same boat. Very warm, big sense of community, very neighbourly. Doors were always left open, keys were always left indoors, you know what I mean? Everybody was in and out of everybody's houses. But Cork at that time, I think it just felt like a very hopeless place. It just felt very dark. And I suppose just from my generation of girls growing up at that time, the expectations for you to do anything were really, really low. You know what I mean? You either went to College of Commerce and you did a secretarial course, or maybe you went into nursing, and neither of those things were appealed to me. I ended up going to MTU, which is now was the regional tech, the RIC at the time in Cork, doing a business studies course there, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I had no clue. I hated it. And I think there was some parts of Cork growing up at that time were great, because there was a lot of really good music. There was a lot of really good bands. There was kind of lots and lots and lots of young people. But everybody was leaving. They were leaving in their droves. Nobody was working. There was no hope or possibility that you could ever get a job. And people just left. And they also left because, you know, it was quite an oppressive, a socially oppressive place as well. You know what I mean? And you go to somewhere like London and the freedom was immense. You know, it really was. It was great. There was a whole gang of us, because we tend to travel in gangs, a whole group of Cork living in London. And it was great. It was really, really good. It was good fun. It was really enjoyable, I have to say.
Yeah, I got a job on the South Mall in 1982 in an accountancy office. And it was a case of work by day, study by night. So there was no college. And Dad had worked with the BNI and he'd been made redundant. So again, there was that voice at the back of my head saying, well, you know, let's not put them to any overhead or expense that they couldn't take on board. So that apprenticeship, no different to being an electrician or a carpenter or anything else, you work by day, you study by night, you were paid throughout, so you did your exams, you qualified. So I was 17, qualified at 22. And weirdly, I had a newspaper run. So before I headed off to work every day, I delivered the Examiner through letterboxes and then headed off to work on my bicycle and into the South Mall and everything else. I had that feeling that if you had a job, my God almighty, you hung on to it by the fingernails.
Yeah, for dear life, like, you were not giving that job up. And the idea was, if you could get into the bank, it was my mother's dream, you know, get into the bank or get into the civil service. They were the two dream jobs, because there was permanency. It was a job for life. You know, you could never be removed from those kind of roles. Like, when you think about it now, you always felt that your choices were extremely limited, or you didn't have any choices, you know, which was, when you think back, was kind of, kind of depressing in a way.
Yeah.
You know?
So that fear of unemployment, would that have existed in your house? Because all that conversation about Dunlops and Sunbeam and all that kind of thing, like, that wasn't an overnight thing. That kind of, it lived in Cork for such a long time, didn't it? That cloud.
It did. That cloud, it did. It lived in Cork for such a long time. Yes, I think so. I mean, I always worked. So you always had like summer jobs, whatever, doing bits and pieces, working in shops. I worked in Dunn's. I hated it, but you know, you had to, because there was no pocket money. I worked in Mary Rose Cafe in the Savoy on Saturdays, and I got, I think it was like £8, 10 pence for the day, which is just ridiculous. What is that? It's not even £1 an hour, you know? I think so. Is there a fear of being unemployed? Yeah, maybe there was, because my father was out of work. And like, when you think about it, he was probably only in his 40s. And that was seen to be really old. You know what I mean? So when Dunlop, so there was never any possibility that he would get another job. You know, that was, and it was the same for all men of his age. Like, and when you think about it now, 40 is quite young, really, really young. You know. Did
he work again?
No, not really. He did bits and pieces here and there. Like, you know, he was big into the theatre, so he did a lot of, he spent a lot of his time involved in the Everyman, which was great. It was a huge outlet for him. Like, it was brilliant. It kind of saved him, really. He wrote little plays and short stories, and so that was wonderful for him. But nothing really concrete, no.
Okay. So did that have a big impact on him, would you say, personally?
Yes and no. He was a very unusual man. He hated working in Dunlops. He hated factory work. He hated the monotony of it. He was very creative. Yes, obviously we didn't have a whole lot of money, but he loved having the time to work front of house in the Everyman, where he was heavily involved in the Cork Theatre Company. He was heavily involved in the Loft. So that took up an awful lot of his time, and that was really his passion. So he had a lot of time to do the things that he was really passionate about, you know what I mean? And I think he kind of, looking back now, he kind of did it without any sense of guilt. Because he was like, well, I can't look for it. There's no jobs there. You know what I mean? I think my mother found it probably a lot more, she felt it a lot more than he did.
So in a small way, he was set free to a degree, was he?
I think so. Yeah. Myself and my brother always say that. Yeah, we think he was. I think he was set free. And he kind of got a get out of jail card free, like he 100% did.
So in this Cork Cloud family to a point, except with your dad maybe getting a little bit of a pass, what were the conversations around the kitchen table?
Gosh, kind of hard to remember. I think, when you're sort of younger, you get very kind of idealistic politically, or at least my brother and I did, you know what I mean? You're having those stupid conversations about communism and you think that you're, the coolest thing ever. Do you know that kind of thing? Down with capitalism, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of the conversations would probably have been around what was happening politically at the time. So you had the whole kind of Charlie Haughey era and everything that went along with that. I think that kind of took a lot of time. Like, my mother was quite unwell for some of the periods, so a lot of the conversations were sort of obviously around her. Now she's fine now, she's great. But yeah, it's kind of hard to remember, really. I don't think we weren't a family that would sit down at the dinner table and have a kind of a big political discussion or anything, you know what I mean? I don't ever remember us doing that. It was probably quite mundane, you know?
And what were your dreams? What did you want to do?
I think for me, it was like, I had this dream of being a journalist, and I knew that wouldn't happen. When my father was unemployed, we couldn't afford to go to college. And then I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And I was told you could never do that because you don't know anybody in the legal profession, so that's never going to work for you. And I suppose in a way, when I went back to college as a mature student, as an adult in my 30s or whatever, I think maybe I had kind of did that, and maybe that was still there somehow because that was what I chose to do. You know what I mean? I was terrified, petrified going in there. But yeah, I'm really glad I did it. Really, really glad I did it. So maybe that was it, I think. I don't know. It's hard kind of looking back. You lived in Cork at that time. I think the hopelessness of it, I think it was very oppressive. It didn't lend itself to seeing or maybe visualizing yourself as to what you could be or what you could become. Do you know what I mean? Because it was dark, I think. It was quite dark,
Yeah. I remember very, very clearly thinking, I will be a success if I manage to get a job that does me through my life. It was about getting a job.
Yeah.
And fear of survival was kind of a motivator. And
that's a good point, yeah.
And maybe now when we look at the young bucks who do the lovely college years and then they come out and then they need to travel the world before you're like, oh my God, really?
I know, I kind of think it's great though. I do. I'm like, go for it.
Oh, totally.
Do it. Yeah. Great. I think it's great. Oh, you look at them with envy, like.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. But there's that little bit of, well, Jesus almighty.
Oh, you don't know you're born. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe that's what we do through the different decades.
Yeah.
So was London, in some way, was there that sense of adventure or was it pure necessity?
Oh, God, yeah. A complete adventure. It was great. Oh, it was. It really was a sense of adventure. It really was. Like, none of us knew what we were doing. We were all very innocent. We were all very kind of green. And then we kind of did, we kind of messed around for a few years. And then we all got a little bit serious and thought, okay, we need to get proper jobs now. You can't be waitressing for the rest of your life. Do you know what I mean? You can't be picking around working in bars. You need to start getting a proper job. And then, of course, I did what had been drilled into me. I got a job in the civil service. And I was like, okay, I'm doing the proper thing now. I'm a proper person. I'm a proper adult. I'm starting my life.
Yeah. Okay. And when did you feel for the first time, ooh, I'm kind of enjoying this. This is a career. This is a path I'm interested in.
I think when I worked in the homeless person section, I enjoyed that. It was just my first time. It was really challenging work. It was really, really, really challenging. And there was a lot of frontline work. And I liked that. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed dealing with people. I think that's when I started to enjoy it. I was kind of thinking, okay, there could be something here. There could definitely be something here, you know what I mean, that I really, really liked. And I do always remember feeling that in this particular environment, and there was no criticism of the local authority, I'm very limited as to what I can actually do or as to what I can actually achieve here, you know, and I don't know. I'm trying to get an understanding of what the broader issues were. It was kind of more eye-opening, I think, for me. Yeah. It was really, really, really eye-opening. You know, I had kind of realized that I had been wandering, stumbling around with kind of blinkers on, and then all of a sudden you're thinking, Jesus, okay, oh wow, there's this whole, this is what these people have lived through. This is okay, this is what the world is, you know? Because I must have been quite maybe narrow and insular in my thinking. And I think that was when things started to kind of open up for me almost, you know, if that makes sense.
Was that a discovery for you? So, I like this.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. It definitely was. Yeah. Definitely was.
I presume it was just a job to begin with, and then suddenly...
It was just a job to begin with, and, you know, another job comes up within the local authority, you get promoted to that, and, you know, you're going along, and then all of a sudden... This was a whole new project that they had set up, newly arrived homeless, single homeless and some homeless refugee families, because the numbers were starting to rise in the UK at the time, and the office was just outside St Pancras Station, King's Cross St Pancras Station. And King's Cross was not then like King's Cross is now. King's Cross was very, very, very different. And it was full of hotels, and we could put people in for one night single occupancy into hotels. So you saw a lot of people with addiction issues, a lot of people with alcohol, drugs, and people seeking asylum. The whole gamut of human life was there. And I remember thinking, okay, I actually like this. I don't know why I like this, but this is good.
Yeah.
This feeling, trying to make it change, trying to make the world make it a little bit better. You know what I mean? That kind of feeling, and that was very new for me.
So that was the end of law degrees and working in a big legal practice. That was all gone now suddenly.
It was more the kind of like the grittiness of it, or the reality of people's lives. You know what I mean? Working with that, I don't know. There was just something about it that appealed.
You were hooked.
I was, yeah. I was. I actually was, yeah.
And that environment over there that was accepting all of these refugees in there, and where the locals and how they were responding to it. Could you describe that environment to me?
You see, we wouldn't have seen that a huge amount because we were immediate. You know what I mean? We were first stop. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And then people would move out to wherever they were brought. And then obviously a lot of the people who had addiction and substance misuse issues would be housed kind of together in King's Cross. It wasn't really a community there, you know what I mean? So I suppose you would get an occasional sense of hostility and racism. You would. I could never feel it, but maybe it was because I wasn't that engaged past the initial part. But I think what was very prevalent in London in those days was the extent of the anti-Irish feeling. I remember that was very strong. And maybe it was because I was so enclosed in that I maybe didn't see other people's experiences. But that was really challenging because we were viewed as, you know, bombers and terrorists. And, you know what I mean? That was, and you would get that from your colleagues who you would work with and sit next to you. You know what I mean? If a bomb went off, you know, somewhere in London, and you'd be dreading coming into work on Monday morning and going, you know, almost apologising and saying, you know, it wasn't me, it had nothing to do with this, I don't support this, you know what I mean? But you could feel the hostility towards you. You really could. There was a lot of very, very, very deep-seated and deep-rooted anti-Irish sentiment that was very, very, very pervasive.
And witnessing people with these addiction issues and homelessness issues, that would have been your first time ever really experiencing that. We would have had a little bit of it in Cork, I'm sure, at the time, but not to that degree.
Not to that degree, no. Never, would never have experienced it. No, it was like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? I mean, you would have heard of it in Dublin maybe, but seeing it firsthand, it was quite new. It really was. And I remember thinking, I have been walking around with my eyes closed for the last, I don't know, like oblivious.
A lot of the time, society looks at these as being very scary people.
Yeah.
You obviously didn't feel that, did you? Or maybe
No,
you did to
they
begin
weren't.
with.
Not at all. They weren't scary at all. Not at all. I mean, you treat people as your equal with dignity, with respect. No, not at all. No. They weren't scary. I mean, we used to have to, when you think about it, we used to have to go to the hotels that they were staying in just to check that they were, local authority would send you in just to check that they were there. And, they sent 2 women in, and it wouldn't be grand. Like, you'd be going into the room. Now, God knows what you'd see in the room would be whatever. But, like, they all knew us. We knew them. No. It was never... I never felt threatened. No. Not by these guys, no.
I had Dawn Russell, who's CEO of the Anna Liffey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, on the podcast. They used to be called the Anna Liffey Drug Project, and talking about through all of that. And I think one of the things in particular that she comes up against is when they have the drug, the kind of safe use and all that, those kind of programs.
Oh, the harm reduction.
Yeah, exactly. That a lot of people have a big issue with that. They just think you're just facilitating these drug addicts and all that kind of thing. And, these people who we prefer not to see around our streets and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I remember one of the guys who worked with us like that. He'd come into work on the South Mall and giving out that he had to pass homeless people begging on the way to the office, and we'd be like, what the hell is wrong with you? That they were upsetting his life on his journey to his workplace, where he was doing great work every day and earning a crust, and these bums.
Yeah, they were. They need to get up off there. Yeah.
It's kind of strange. It's kind of strange.
Like, we have here what we call a dash van. So it's the drugs, alcohol and sexual health. And it's a mobile unit that has a presence in the city. And the idea is looking at the intersection between sexual health and drug and alcohol abuse. And we do this kind of brief interventions on the street for people, and it's mainly aimed at young people who are out at night, say on a Saturday night or whatever. It's not a medical van or anything. But getting that on the road was actually quite a challenge, because we did get a lot of resistance, and people were saying, oh, if people see this van, they're going to think that Cork is an absolute drug den and we have to have vans on the street. But it's actually the total opposite. It's, it's harm reduction is what we're doing. We're not going out there. Now, in the end, it's been fine. We've been allowed out. We go to festivals. We go to everything. But I think that attitude that you talked about, that kind of scary attitude, that's still quite kind of pervasive. That it shows like the wrong image of the city. That's not the image that we want to put out there. You know what I mean? But in a sense, it kind of is the image that you want to put out there, because you're putting out an image saying that we want to make Cork City really safe. We want to make Cork City, the nighttime economy, really safe for everybody. We want everybody to feel safe, and we want everybody to be protected. And, if you're not good of a night, just come and talk to us and we'll see if we can help you, So it took a bit of work to get that message across, that it's actually a positive thing, and it's something that the city should be proud of, and saying, look, this is part of our nighttime economy, and this is part of making sure that our citizens are safe and that everybody enjoys themselves when they're out of an evening. And it's a good thing. It's a progressive thing, But that attitude, I suppose, is still there, isn't it? Yeah,
definitely. And maybe in many ways we need to think about why people arrive in that place and they hold these views. Is it the stuff we read in the newspapers and everything? Because I do think, now we work in communication, so in 2026. I do think we need to make up our minds about things very, very quickly. Unless you're really interested in a topic, you're not going to do loads of research. So you read the headline, you look at the photograph, and there's so much clickbait and everything. So you get hoovered into that whole world. So you do carry around these views quite easily. They can build up very easily. And with algorithms and everything, you can be boxed off as a... Totally. Your decision to come back to Ireland, what prompted that?
I have 2 daughters. And I was starting to panic about secondary school. I mean, really panic. I was like, well, where are they going to go to school? Where are they going to go to secondary school? Because primary school's okay. Primary school was fine. And secondary school was really bothering me. And it also kind of came to a point where we were thinking, do we stay or do we go? It's kind of like, almost like a migrant mentality. You have we have got a foot in each place, you know what I mean? And we're always saying, oh, we'll come back. But, you know, we never did. And I was kind of saying, okay, we have to make a decision. We either decide that we're going to stay or we're going to come back, because this half is not working for us, and it's not working for the kids, because they're like, you know, where do we belong? And also, I think it was that. And then the fact of missing family and lack of support. There's no support around. And also my husband's mother was elderly and was ill, and she had like a stroke, and she had the start of Alzheimer's. And, you know, we wanted to kind of go back and help care for her. And the education and the schooling bit as well was really important, because my daughter was about to go into secondary school, but she was a baby. Like, she was an absolute, or she would have 1 more year, she was an absolute baby. And I was like, she's not ready. So we decided, okay, we just held our nose, took the leap, and came back. And it was a great decision. It really was. It was really good.
Yeah. And from a professional point of view, were you coming back with hope?
Yes, absolutely. Because it was a different Ireland. We came back, you know, Celtic Tiger was roaring, and we were like, oh, you know, we can buy a house and we won't have to have a mortgage. But that never happened. We couldn't afford to buy a house and make it back.
You didn't grab that magic wand?
No, we missed that boat. So we rented for a few years. My husband works in construction. He got a job. Kids settled in school. It was good. It was really good. We were very hopeful. Took us a while to settle in. You know, kids had to get used to school and everything being different. But I think for me, I then had an opportunity as I wasn't working. I was like, oh, maybe I can go back to college now. Because it's very hard to leave a job to make a decision to go back to college. But I had already, you know, I had come back from Ireland. So that was good. And it was really good for the kids as well. I think they did. They're really happy here. They were really happy here. It was the right decision for us. It definitely was, you know.
And what was the purpose of that college degree? Was there something...
It was a law degree again. I think it was a law degree in the back of my head. And it was also the kind of thing that if I wanted to do this kind of work, if I wanted to do something in the context of human rights and social justice, I need to know what it is. I need to have the tools. I need to have a greater understanding of it, because I knew that I wanted to go way beyond doing what I was doing, but I couldn't because the job wouldn't allow it. And I didn't have the knowledge. So that was the big driver for me, was to try and get to learn and understand and get that knowledge and get those tools and that kind of understanding. That was the real driver for me, so that whatever you do, you can do that on the next level up almost. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. So you're no longer putting plasters on things. So maybe you could stop putting plasters on things and maybe kind of go and really address what the issue really is and have a greater understanding as to how you can make that change, you know?
That's nice though, is it? Because from being in a little bit of a fog as to what you wanted to do, suddenly you had a bit of clarity. So those college courses made an awful lot of sense.
Huge. Made an awful lot of sense to me too.
Yeah.
I'm doing that work in London and kind of thinking, okay, how do I do more of this, but how do I do more of this and better? Do you know what I mean? I can't just walk into a job. I need to learn. And
I presume that was an amazing student to have in front of you, someone who wanted to get very, very specific, practical things from these courses, you know, as opposed to a young buck who's still figuring it out.
Yeah, maybe. I think, though, as a mature student, like in UCC, mature students have a really bad reputation. Like,
do they?
They all hate them. They're like, oh, they're the friend of the class. They're only asking all the questions. And I kind of sussed that really early on. And I was like, oh, I'm just keeping my mouth shut here now. I'm not going to open my mouth. I'm not going to draw any attention to me here now. I'm just going to put the head down and do it. And also, as a mature student, you're not going out on Thursday night, student nights. You know what I mean? You're very focused on your work. Like, you really are, you know? Now you're juggling other things like family and kids and everything else, but your focus is I think, a lot sharper.
Were you getting the invites to the Thursday night gigs?
Not a lot now, Greg. No. Maybe a few towards the end, all right, but they were always politely declined, maybe going to the odd one. We had a little group of jurors.
Come on, Fiona, come out. We'll all get thrashed together.
No. I did have that. No, we're done.
The work with the NASC, can you talk to me about that? Yeah.
So I started there as a legal officer, which I loved. So I was working directly with refugees and migrants, and we provided legal advice, information, and support. And we helped them through lots of applications, like applications for residency. Family reunification was a really big piece of work. So helping them get reunited with their families who were left behind, and working with people who had fallen undocumented, people who were in the asylum process. We went right across the board, really, with the work we did. And I loved it. It was great. It was a really, really, really good, really dedicated team of people working there. It was really good. When I started, we were in Mary Street, and then we moved to Pope's Quay, and now they're still in Paul Street. So that's kind of been the permanent home now for a while. So the main thrust of the work was providing legal information, advice and support to, and we covered not just refugees and asylum seekers, we did migrant workers. So it was a really broad swathe of work that we did and still do, yeah. Which is great. It was really good.
Yeah. Really and you finished off there as being CEO, I understand,
yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So that move to being the boss and not on the front line anymore, was that a big change for you?
That was hard. I kind of missed it. That was hard. I was like, but I got over that. It was fine. It was a big, I probably didn't know what I was doing for the first year, if I'm being honest, but I think I got there, but I did miss the frontline work. I did. I absolutely did. But you can't do both. And I enjoyed my time as CEO, and we had a lot of focus on trying to make kind of strategic change, you know what I mean? Stuff that would make a real kind of an impact or a difference. And I loved that. I really did. Yeah. Great work, great team. We did a lot of really, really good stuff. We really did.
And in your period of time there, could you see the environment changing and the attitude towards migrants?
It was really strange. So when I came in, it was hostile. So the press and the media were always quite negative towards us. It was very hostile. So it was the start. Kinsale Road Accommodation Centre wasn't long there. That had kind of settled down. The conditions that people were living in were appalling. Direct provision, we'd been arguing for a long time for reforms to direct provision. Like people who were living in DP at that time were on €19 and 10 a week, which was nothing. People were living in real hardship. They had no rights. They had no access to education. They had no access to work. So a huge amount of the campaigning work that we did was around that. And then slowly but surely, the environment shifted and became more positive. And I sat on the working group. The government set up a working group. I said, okay, we need to look at direct provision, because at that stage, people were waiting 5 years in direct provision. And there was the tide was turning. There was a lot of empathy toward these people. A lot of media were covering it. So the narrative was changing. So there was this abolished direct provision, the movement, a lot of asylum seekers themselves started speaking up and giving voice, and there were protests, and the government all of a sudden changed as well. But the government said, okay, we'll set up a working group looking at, it was when Francis Fitzgerald was the minister at the time, looking at how do we reform was our remit. So we sat on that working group and we did a huge amount of work reforming the system. We did get a lot of flack from kind of NGOs in general and people living in the asylum process, because they were like, you're selling us out, you're going for reform. We need abolition. But at the time, you're kind of going, reform first. These are the steps. We have to go through it. A couple of things came from that. People who were in the system for more than 5 years were given a residency permission. That was fantastic. That wasn't highly publicised. And then things started getting more positive again. Then there was another, Catherine Day. I sat on a group with Dr. Catherine Day looking at alternatives to direct provision. That was set up by the government at the time. And that was really good. So we had a really good alternative model that we had worked through. And then Roderick O'Gorman became a minister with responsibility for direct provision and migration. And he made a commitment to ending direct provision. And we all thought, this is going to happen. It was just incredible. So you're going from this space where the government is really positively disposed. And we had always said that there's no great kind of right-wing opposition from government to migration and to asylum. in general. So we kind of had, and a lot of the noise was kind of minority. It wasn't that loud. Twitter was still a nice-ish enough place to be.
It used to be.
Yeah, it used to be. It used to be lovely. I miss it. Like, I used to be there for my source of news, and the first thing in the morning, look, what's going on? But to go from that to that hope that, it's going to end and we have this new model and to all of a sudden there's just been this, and I think a pretty fast decline. It's almost like a 360 turn. It's just, it leaves you spinning. It really does. Like, it's just, how the hell? Like, and you could see it. If you're standing back now, you can see the signs. You can. One at a time. You can see the signs. You can see the signs. And then you go from ending direct provision to having people sleeping in tents along the Grand Canal because they have nowhere to go. These tents getting burnt out. Protests outside asylum centres. Asylum centres being burnt out. You're thinking, Jesus, like, what? And so now it's very difficult, I would say, working in that space. Like, really essential, but very, very, very hard. Because I think I was talking to an ex-colleague of mine, actually happened to meet her last night in the gym, and she was just saying, it's the hopelessness of it. And I think she's right. It is the hopelessness of it, because you hear the rhetoric from government. They're not outright blaming asylum seekers for the housing crisis, but they kind of are. So they'll say, yes, we have a housing crisis, but they'll say, you've got to remember that, the demographics of a population are now changing. We now house a lot more migrants than we did before. So you're de facto blaming migrants. And the same when it comes to the issues with the health service. And now you have, what's his name, Minister O'Callaghan, Jim O'Callaghan, like literally trying for a refugee to get reunited with their family member is next near to impossible now. So you're splitting up families. And just for what? Cheap political gain. Because it's not going to make any fundamental difference to the numbers of people that are coming in. You're just going to destroy people's lives and destroy people's chance of being part of community and society and rebuilding their lives. Groups of people that have been through, unspeakable trauma. So it's really, it's, when I look at it, I'm like, God almighty,
You were on the front line of it, watching it over a long period of time, maybe. Would you have 20 years? Would you have 2 decades of it nearly?
So I left in 2022. So I remember I had just left, and it was the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I remember leaving going, oh, this is going to be something we've not experienced before, So I finished it kind of in March, April. So we had the initial welcome, initial very warm welcome, which is now after seriously cooling off. And that was a huge piece of work, as you can imagine, because there was thousands and thousands of people that were coming in, and initially the state was very open and very warm, and again very positive. But then you can see the whole thing just changed. It's just so strange to see the years of work, the eventually getting somewhere, the hope, the change, the hope that people seeking asylum feeling, and then all of a sudden you have hate and hostility. People getting burnt out of their homes. And, I don't know. To me, at the moment, it feels really hopeless. I just don't know. I don't have the answers for this. Like, I really don't, It does feel very hopeless. And you do feel that you have a government as well that are actually, they're happy in one way to see this happening, because, let's all blame the migrants over there. Because don't be looking at us, look at them,
I think there's definitely a fear with the politicians. And I think they've concluded that a lot of people now are anti-immigrant. And if we continue being pro-immigrant or maybe even neutral, that we're going to lose voters. And we need to pay a bit of lip service to joining in that middle ground kind of conversation. Or, let's have a look at them, and maybe it is out of control. But you're right, though, about Ukraine. Like, at the minute the world allowed that to happen, how many million people got displaced, and they arrive everywhere.
Yeah.
And it continues to be allowed. So if you allow that to happen, you're giving a pass on the problem there, but you're importing it here. If you pull all of your foreign aid into these countries where there's starvation and everything else. Well, that's all very clever. But those people are going to get out of their countries to feed their families and to be safe. So it's one thing to ignore them, and you might think that's a great thing. We're going to be America first or Europe first or whatever. But you're just importing another problem when you ignore those things. So those pennies aren't very aligned, I think.
And look, people are always going to move, Greg. They have since time immemorial. People are always going to move. We moved. I moved. You know what I mean? People are always going to move. It's just people.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is.
I feel it's hopeless.
The work with the One Foundation, was that in a way a continuation of what you were doing with NASC?
Yeah, so the priority for Jack Ryan, the founder of the One Foundation, was migration and minority groups. So I suppose I was in the unenviable position of being able to fund migrant organisations and migrant-led organisations to deliver the work. And a lot of the money went to supporting people to help Ukrainians at the time, because that was the most pressing issue. So it was Ukrainian support. It was a huge amount of money. We worked very closely with Community Foundation of Ireland to get a lot of money out there to community groups. And then we also put a lot of support into organisations who were trying to tackle the rise of hate and other kind of migrant and refugee organisations, because you could see that the tide was turning. You could see that the environment and the landscape was changing quite rapidly. So we were hoping that, what I liked about the One Foundation is that they're not afraid, or they weren't afraid to support advocacy. So like a lot of your normal funding streams were like, no, we're just going to do services. We're not going to do advocacy. So this was very advocacy driven. And then we worked with another foundation called the Rowan Trust, and they were kind of the same mindset. And they had a particular interest in supporting LGBT groups. So then we worked with them a lot to kind of match the funding. So that worked very well. So you're pooling your resources and you're pooling your funding together, and you're bringing both sets of expertise together. So yeah, that worked. That worked well. So yeah, it was kind of more the same, but kind of from the slightly adjacent to it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. You were supporting them slightly adjacent to it. Everybody wanted to talk to you, of course, because you had money, and you're wondering, do you actually want to talk to me, or are you just looking to see if we can give you money? So it's a bit of both, I suppose.
Yeah. And of course people will chase the money because they
need
the money.
I've done it. I still do it. Of course you will.
Yeah.
You have to. It's your job.
Was it being a big difference for you to actually having some control of the purse strings?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Did you like that?
No, I didn't feel any, no. I think the advantage for me, I suppose, in a sense, was I kind of knew a lot of the organisations, and I knew how they worked, and I knew what they needed, and I also knew what organisations worked well and what organisations didn't work well, and maybe when organisations weren't being 100% truthful. Because having that long experience in the sector, do you know what I mean? So I think being the money person made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest. You know what I mean? Because it's just a funny position to be in, But no, it was fine. It was good. Yeah, we made some good grants.
What did you learn from that experience?
What did I learn from that experience? That it was very much in the private sector, and it was unusual in the sense that it was, you had one arm of the organisation making the money, and I was here spending the money. That was difficult. That was a challenge, because obviously don't always want to give away the money that you're making. And I think the private sector way of working, I didn't like. I found that very, very, very challenging. The sharp elbows and the kind of the one-upmanship and the always, making sure that you tell people what you've done. I found all of that. I didn't like that. I think maybe the thing I've learned most is that the private sector is just not for me. Well, yeah. I found it really challenging.
Is that the kind of ego, kind of pure when the optics around jumping into that space?
Yeah, that's not great. Not for me. Didn't suit my personality. Just didn't. No, I shrank in there. I felt I shrank actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's great to hear you saying that openly, and that's cool. And I understand it. Sometimes, like we're in PR, and you will have the private clients who, let's get involved in something, and what kind of a non-profit do you want to get involved in, and what kind of a cause do you want to hitch your wagon to, and all that kind of thing. And there's one part that says, well, let's do it quietly. We don't want anyone knowing we're involved in it. Let's do this for good motives and everything else. There's another part to us that says, well, it's not the worst thing in the world to publicise that you are getting involved in this thing, if it is genuine.
I 100% agree with it. There's not. And the One Foundation didn't really publicise. Like Declan Ryan was really publicity shy. He didn't want anyone to know what he was giving.
But yet then there were the sharp elbows and all that kind of thing.
Within the finance element, within the finance piece, do you know what I mean? It was a tricky dynamic.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. A tricky dynamic. We'll meet for a pint some night and I'll tell you, but not in this context.
Yeah. No, that's cool, because that's the world that we live in to a degree. Then we do an awful lot of work in non-profit. And to us as practitioners, you ask any of our team, there's a heart and soul to so much of the work that we do. And in terms of the clients that we work for, it can be so satisfying.
Yes.
When you can make a difference. I think ultimately we all want to make a difference in so many ways.
And I think it's no harm if people want to publicise. I think that's good.
Yeah.
And by publicising, you're encouraging more people. Yeah. I really think it's a good thing. I really do. Because you're kind of thinking, oh my God, see that firm over there. Well, now we better start doing something.
Totally. Totally. And lend your way to a particular organisation.
Exactly.
I think that's really, really good.
And it's really beneficial for employees because they get a real sense that, they're making a difference and that they're contributing to something. No, 100%. I think it's really, really positive.
Okay. So the Sexual Health Centre.
Yes.
That was a big change. When did that opportunity come about?
I was recovering from surgery, actually. I had a double hip replacement. I was recovering from surgery and I saw it come up. And I thought, okay, I like this. I like the look at this. I like the combination of the work. So we work with a lot of reproductive rights. So we do pregnancy counselling, post-termination counselling, HIV counselling, LGBTQ support and counselling. So there's a lot of different arms to the Sexual Health Centre. We do rapid HIV testing, pregnancy testing, and we do a lot of sexual health education in the community, which is really good. So engaging with kind of groups, especially underserved communities, working with kind of communities, talking about, sexual health and the importance of sexual health. And we work with kind of non-formal education. So your kids that are in youth reach, talking to them about the importance of sexual health and sexual well-being. So there's a lot about it that was very attractive, and I liked the breadth of it and the fact that it's it appealed to me. And again, it's the same. So you're talking about trying to make sexual health an integral part of your everyday life. This is not something that's extraordinary. And growing up in the 80s, where you would never have a conversation about sexual health, and looking at Ireland and seeing how far we've come, and even looking at the context of sexual health and seeing all the advances that have been made here, you know what I mean? So we now have abortion, there's marriage equality has come along. There's the morning after pill, there's free contraception for women up to the age of 34. We're openly talking about HIV. We're talking about rapid HIV testing. You know what I mean? It's that's a phenomenal pace of change. It really is. And that was very attractive to me as well. And you're kind of thinking, my God, there's a government or HSE are actually on board with this. You know what I mean? They want to see and want to implement all of these changes. So that was attractive. And it was in Cork. It was key for me. But that, I think the breadth of it and the change and the scope then that provides within that, to try and see what else is there to be done and what else can we do and how can we do it,
Yeah, so I understand it began in 1987. It was the Cork AIDS Alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that probably explains a little bit as to how the organisation was formed and what were the circumstances whereby that peaked. And again, I think this conversation we're having, going back to Irish people emigrating to London and everything else in the 80s, at a time when you couldn't buy condoms. There was no contraception.
No.
Yeah. I remember getting condoms in London in one of the record stores. And
Virgin.
yeah, exactly. And actually putting them into one of my records that I knew no one would ever listen to.
No.
That was my hiding place. Yeah. And God almighty, that repressed Ireland, you wouldn't talk about sex with anyone
No.
any of these things. Yeah. So tell me, is there a replica of this organization in the other cities, or is this a very, very specific setup?
There is, but I think Cork is quite specific in the sense. So there is in Limerick, there's GOSH, but they don't provide the reproductive rights, the counselling for termination, post-termination. We do miscarriage also, we do menopause and infertility. They don't do that, but they do a lot of the other aspects. There's another organisation, Sexual Health West in Galway, that are similar. And then there's kind of maybe HIV Ireland, which in Dublin, which is purely HIV prevention and testing focus. So I think we do the broadest, area of work, really. We work quite broadly across sexual health in the widest context.
Okay. So the very lovely, driven Fiona, what are you going to do with this entity and where are you going to bring it?
There's a couple of things. So one thing that it's not just me, we are very proud of is we have worked very closely with an incredible group of trans people. And we, in partnership with them, have opened Ireland's first trans healthcare clinic that is an informed consent model. And that's running here one night a month, which is really successful. We've kept it very much on the down low because of the extreme hostility and hate that is targeted and transphobia that is targeted against this community. So that's the thing that's actually something that I'm really proud of. It's not just me. I haven't done this. This is working with the community. It was the community's idea. They came to us. We just kind of facilitated it. But that's been great. That's been phenomenal. That's something that I'm very proud of. I would really, really, really like to see if we could make PrEP. So this is the drug. So basically, if you're on PrEP, it protects you against HIV. So it's an HIV preventative drug. So you can have unprotected sex and not contract HIV. It's available in Ireland. It's free, but the wait lists are really, really, really long, like really long. So I'm really trying to see if we could have a PrEP clinic here, if we could improve PrEP provision in some way. We now also do trans peer support, which is great. We have a trans peer support worker, which has been phenomenal. Again, working with the trans community, that's really good. But I think, the PrEP piece would be really important. And also another area of work that we really are looking at that I think is very important is looking at and tackling chemsex, because chemsex is becoming problematic for the LGBT community, especially for some very young men who have sex with men. So we're looking to see, is there something that we can do to tackle that? Because it's rising in Dublin, it's starting to rise in Cork, and we're seeing shades of it here,
So on behalf of listeners who, I don't know, mightn't be illuminated to that degree, what in the name of God is chemsex?
So I suppose chemsex is the use of chemicals or drugs in settings that are kind of sex parties, for want of a better word. And its use is becoming quite damaging and problematic for people, because I think it stems from wanting to kind of have a sense of, I don't know, maybe community or sense of belonging. And there's a lot of kind of maybe young gay men coming out, and this might be their first experience of sex. And that's really not how it is, so it can be quite damaging. I'm not saying all chemsex use is damaging, but it can get very harmful. With a lot of substance use, it's linked to maybe, a discomfort with yourself, a lack of community, a lack of connection. Do you know what I mean? And a feeling that maybe this is the only way that I can connect, and this is what connection is. So we're kind of exploring that at the moment. We're going to do a research piece, hopefully starting in September, just to kind of take the temperature and see what the extent of it is, but it is an issue and it is a problem. It's harmful. It's harmful for the community. It is harming the LGBT community. It's very prevalent in the UK. We have some young men dying in the UK. It's prevalent in Dublin and it is prevalent in Cork, but also because it's got to do with drugs and because it's got to do with sex, it's steeped in shame and it's hidden and it's out of sight and nobody's talking about it. You know what I mean? And I think that the fact that it's hidden and it's the shame that comes with it, I mean, that's a very dangerous spot for somebody to be in. And nobody's talking about it. We do need to talk about it. We need to talk about it more. People need to know that it's happening. And we don't quite yet in Ireland have the supports to adequately deal with it and adequately support people this can spiral into addiction. So people who are...
And with this rising hatred against the LGBT community, This is all going to feed into that same thing, isn't it?
All feeding into that. It's all feeding into that. It's all feeding into the same thing. It is, yeah.
Yeah. So what you were describing about the immigrant community and that tide now from a public opinion thing now going against them is exactly the same thing happening with the LGBT community?
I think probably not to the same extent, okay? But yes and no, okay? So I think if we look at the trans community, okay, if we look at the hate, the transphobia, the attacks that community has come under, tiny minority community, just for being themselves, I think that is as bad as, that is the thing, that is almost the one thing that unites far-right groupings. Do you know what I mean? This is almost like their starting point. This is where they start from. And then, they go off and they attack the migrants and they attack other groups. But this is a real unifying force for them. So yes, in that context, it has always existed towards the trans community. It is really big. I mean, you have Trump, you have J.K. Rowling, you have really political figures, you have the changes that are happening in the UK. Do you know what I mean? So it's not just a small group of people, it's like the whole of society have turned against this small group of people. So it has. And there is this research has a particular focus on the trans community because that's what we want to try and get a sense of what their experiences are, what are their coping mechanisms, and what do we need to do to change this. But also that then trickles down into the broader LGBT community. And kind of what we're hearing from people is that, they're a little bit more reticent than they were before, a lot slower to maybe hold hands going down the street. That whole kind of euphoria after the marriage equality, that's well and truly gone. So there's a bit more fear. People are getting shouted at in the street. We see an increase in people getting attacked. So it's there. And it's this creeping fear. Did you watch that Channel 4 program Tiptoe? It's really good. It's by Rising Hate. It's a hard watch. It's a really hard watch, but it's really worth watching.
So what's the name of it?
Tiptoe.
Tiptoe, okay.
Tiptoe.
Yeah, so I'll definitely get to
watch that. There's one character in it. Yeah, there's one character in it, and he talks about the changing in atmosphere. And he's kind of saying, look, before I used to come into a room and I used to go, ta-da, and now I tiptoe. And I just thought, oh, that's kind of it. That's beautifully put, But obviously that program is the extreme end of it. But I just thought, but it is happening. It is happening among the LGBT community. They will tell you that. Ireland isn't as welcoming or as open as it used to be. You know what I mean? And that's all got to do with the rise of the right. You know what I mean? So that's what we want to try and look at and capture people's experience and really look at what do we need to do to actually address this? What needs to happen? How do our services need to change? How do other services need to change? And then what is the community doing in response to this when this is happening? Because we're hearing people that just don't want to come out of their homes now, So it's just trying to get a real sense of this. And so that we can get, hopefully as a country, we get a handle on it before it escalates. So that was kind of the motivation. That was the motivation behind it, really, just coming from what we're hearing, that people are saying, look, there's a definite change there. And of course, the hatred towards the trans community it's not new, unfortunately. Really, unfortunately, it's not new.
Well, the terrible thing, Fiona, I think that fear is a currency that politicians are using. And
yes.
You have the likes of Donald Trump and all of the nutjob followers, and they start with something that most people don't understand, which is transgender.
Yeah.
And what they will tell you is, well, these weird, extremely weird people over here who want to change their sex, oh my God almighty, and rape your children and do whatever else. Yeah. Well, if the left-leaning folk, the politicians, if they're going to make the world easier for them, well, my God almighty, what are they going to do next? So you need to fear them. And it's the most, if you could pick a topic, that's where they go for, because every left-leaning person is bonkers if they can think that all of this is okay, we've got transgender, what are you doing? And it just starts there. And immigrants, the whole lot, everything that we're talking about, fear is a currency. They're coming here to rape all your women and... Yeah.
It's the same arguments, just picking on different...
And it's easy. It's easy for them to do that. And...
And I get it. There is a huge amount of inequality in Ireland. There is. There are communities that have been left behind. They really have. They have been left behind. Communities that are living in poverty. Current and successive governments haven't given anybody any hope. There's nobody out there. There's a kind of a new, hopeful voice. So people are going to turn to somebody standing over here going, see them over there, it's their fault. They're the ones you need to blame. See what I mean? So you want someone to blame, you want to feel a sense of power, you want to feel a sense of whatever, ownership or whatever. So people will, I can understand it. I'm not saying I condone it, not at all, but I can understand it. And I think it's a deeper societal problem. It really is and I think rising inequality and people I think feel left behind. That they don't have a stake, they don't have a say in society anymore, they don't matter, And then they'll pick on somebody that they perceive as, it's a scapegoat, it's your fault over there. That I'm feeling this way, that my life hasn't turned out the way it's turned out. And then you have people stoking those flames, saying, it's their fault. And see them, it's their fault as well,
Yeah, but Fiona...
I know that's not very articulate now or scientific, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, totally. But the main thing, Fiona isn't giving up the good fight, and
no,
you're still positive.
Yes, you have to be, though. You have to be, Greg, don't you think?
Absolutely.
You wouldn't get out of bed if you weren't.
Yeah, well, I think the world is a better place for having Fiona and
thank you.
Doing what you do. What is happiness to you?
Oh, gosh. Probably, and this is going to be really cheesy, my family. I just had a week. I have one daughter in Australia and one in London, and they both came home. We went down to West Cork for a week with my mum, and it was just wonderful. It was just really nice, and we were all really happy. You know what I mean? It was just nice. Yeah. Well, no, that is really cheesy, but contentment, I think, really is more. I think I'm content anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, nothing cheesy at all.
Yeah. It's not something I think about. What is happiness? But I think contentment is what we should really is kind of more realistic, isn't it? When you think about happiness, you think it has to be something big up there, and you have to be ecstatic all the time.
Not really.
No, contentment. Yeah, having enough. I like that idea.
And winning, and I know we spoke about that a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah, making change.
That's what winning is to you, isn't it?
Huh? Yeah, 100%. Making change. Yeah. That gives me a lot of joy.
Yeah, fantastic.
And when you do things that people don't expect that we could actually do, and you go, well, we did. And it was easy. It was not that hard. Well, not easy, but not as hard as you thought. But yeah, that makes me cheer.
My very last question for you is, for me, on the Win Happy podcast, it's all about identifying the things that give you satisfaction in your life. But once you get those, then you're on the path to kind of making things a little bit better. What was the best choice you've made? And what was the best voice you had along the way that kind of helped you along?
Oh, that's a very big question. The best choice I made was probably coming back to Ireland, I would think, so far in my life. The best voice. I'm not sure. Because there's been different people at different stages in your life, depending on what stage of your life it is. I would probably have to say Dominic, my husband, and probably my eldest daughter, Sarah, who's kind of wise beyond her years. Maybe, but I've never had a kind of a mentor person that was kind of walking with me, if you know what I mean. And I've always been really kind of resilient and kind of...
It's interesting that one of your children can be that voice.
Yeah,
So what is it about Sarah that would help you?
Just, I suppose in general, like she tells you the absolute truth. And she's always hugely encouraging, especially as she's kind of gotten older, like hugely, oh, that's great that you're doing that. Oh my God, that's amazing. Don't speak so negatively about yourself. I don't want you hearing you speaking negatively about yourself. Just that constant encouragement has been really, it's been really good. And it seeps in, you know, which I quite like it seeps in. She's 34 now, so it just seeps in. Always encouraging, always great communicator. You know what I mean? So I just think that she's been very, I suppose helpful, whatever the word is, but yeah. And that's been very much on a personal level. You know, when you're doubting yourself, you know, she's the person that you want to talk to, you know, because she'll lift you up like.
That's so interesting because all of us, regardless of where we come in the hierarchy, we can all play a role with others, even if that's your folks. That's amazing. Is that a lovely lesson to take from our podcast?
I hope so.
That's cool. Well done, Dominic. But we're going to give all the credit to Sarah and maybe the mother and father who put those values into her and steered that ship. Fiona, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I love the conversation.
It was a pleasure. It went lots of places, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, totally. It always does.
You always do.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.